Hey, welcome back to the channel. There's a quiet story unfolding behind closed doors, one that could redefine Canada's entire economic direction. While headlines still focus on tariffs and trade wars, a confidential message from Beijing has just reached Ottawa. Its contents? A proposal so bold it almost sounds impossible.
So, China's ambassador to Canada says China will drop its tariffs on agriculture if Canada drops its EV tariffs on China. How should Canada respond?
China has privately signaled that it's ready to remove every single tariff on Canadian agriculture, from canola oil to pork and seafood, if Ottawa agrees to lift its 100% import ban on Chinese electric vehicles. No long negotiations, no phased deals. Just one move and nearly $5 billion worth of frozen exports could be freed within weeks. It's being called the Golden Deal, but officials in Ottawa know it's more than just a trade offer. It's a test, a subtle challenge to Canada's loyalty within the North American economic bloc.
The premiers of Manitoba and Saskatchewan want Ottawa to scrap its 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, now that China is pledging to lift its punishing tariffs on Canadian pork and canola in exchange.
If the EV tariffs are removed, then China will also remove the tariffs on the relevant products of Canada.
Accept it, and Canada could revive its prairie farmlands overnight. Refuse it, and the world's second-largest market might close its doors for good. So, what's really at stake here? A breakthrough for Canadian farmers, or a quiet reshaping of global power? Before we begin, hit that like button if you're finding this eye-opening. It really helps us beat the algorithm. And if Ottawa were to take that offer, the impact could be nothing short of historic. Canada's western heartland, where the silence of unsold grain has become a painful routine, might finally come back to life. Removing Beijing's 75.8% tariff on raw canola and 100% on canola oil and meal would instantly reopen a market worth over $5 billion, one that's been frozen since early 2025.
A year ago, before Trump was reelected, Canada made a deal with the United States that we would follow their lead and add a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. There was frankly no reason for it other than the fact that the Americans saw that the Chinese were coming in with cars that were of high quality and were much less expensive than anything the Americans could manufacture. They were worried about their industry. So we put ourselves in lockstep with them, Renee, and we said, okay, 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. What did we get in return from the United States? We got attacked. We were told we were going to be made the 51st state. We were told that they were going to go after our auto industry and our other key industries and cripple us economically. Oh, and by the way, the Chinese, of course, in a tit-for-tat move, after we imposed those tariffs, decided to impose some of our agricultural products, including canola. That's really hurt our farmers out west, in particular on the prairies. But it's also something that the average Canadian taxpayer has to worry about, because, of course, those farmers are going to have to get subsidies. So the Chinese are doing it their way. They're just saying, you did this, we did that, you will remove ours if you remove yours. And Canada should really give that serious consideration. There's absolutely no reason for us to be kowtowing to the Americans on this anymore when they're playing the types of games that they're playing with us.
According to CBC News, China once accounted for nearly a quarter of all Canadian canola exports, a share large enough to sustain entire communities across Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba. For thousands of farmers, this isn't just about profit, it's about survival. A renewed trade flow could restart everything from rural credit and logistics chains to processing plants and port activity.
By the EV tariffs. Our advice to the Prime Minister, though, is that we want to see canola tariffs removed. That's what farmers want. That's what the industry wants. We want the market back open again.
In Beijing's eyes, Canadian canola represents something more strategic, a clean, reliable source of plant protein to replace American soybeans. Some economists have already coined a phrase for this exchange, the Green Trade Pact, a symbolic swap between clean energy and food security. It's an idea that fits perfectly within Canada's climate-driven economic model, but one that also hints at a deeper shift in how global alliances are being redrawn. If you've made it this far, you probably care. Consider subscribing to stay updated. But while Ottawa debates and diplomats weigh the risks, time is running out for the prairies. The same farmlands that once symbolized Canada's agricultural strength are now bearing the brunt of a trade freeze that shows no sign of easing. In Saskatchewan, exports to China have collapsed by 76%, dropping to just $96 million in August, according to provincial data. Manitoba's pork sector has reported annual losses exceeding $19 million, squeezed by Beijing's 25% tariff. For the first time in decades, China, once Canada's top buyer of canola, has effectively shut its doors. The consequences ripple far beyond the farms themselves. Silos are overflowing with unsold grain, processing plants are operating below capacity, and local credit unions are tightening loans as prices for canola and other crops fall sharply. Rural economies that depend on seasonal exports are now in survival mode. In the corridors of Ottawa, these numbers aren't just statistics, they're political pressure points. Western premiers are warning that the region's patience is wearing thin, turning the canola standoff into a broader clash between economic pragmatism and political alignment. For many in the West, it's becoming harder to understand why Canada should keep paying the price for someone else's trade war. Across the border, the story unfolds in reverse. While Canada searches for a path to revive its farmlands, the United States finds itself trapped in a crisis with no clear way out. For years, China was the single largest buyer of American soybeans, accounting for roughly half of all U.S. exports, a trade worth $12.6 billion in 2024. But by mid-2025, that flow had stopped completely. According to the Financial Times, the new export season began with 0 Chinese orders, compared to 6.5 million tons during the same period the previous year. In Beijing's absence, Brazil has stepped in, capturing nearly 75% of China's soybean market, effectively pushing the U.S. out of one of its most strategic agricultural positions. The U.S. Department of Agriculture now estimates American farmers are losing $9.4 billion annually because of the trade rupture, triggering layoffs and bankruptcies across the Midwest. That vacuum is creating an unexpected opening for Canada. As China diversifies its food supply away from U.S. producers, Canadian crops, especially canola and pulses, are being quietly reevaluated as reliable alternatives. In a world where trust and stability matter more than ever, Canada's image as a predictable supplier could prove to be its most valuable export. Back in Ottawa, the debate has now turned into a tug-of-war, not between nations, but between provinces. Prime Minister Mark Carney stands caught between two opposing forces, protecting Ontario's powerful auto industry or rescuing the collapsing farms of the West. In the industrial heart of Ontario, Premier Doug Ford has spoken out sharply against lifting the EV tariff, warning that it would open the floodgates for Chinese cars to flood the domestic market. His concerns aren't unfounded. The province's auto sector supports tens of thousands of jobs, far exceeding the total export value of Canadian canola to China. Yet in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, that same policy is seen very differently. Farmers and trade groups describe the 100% EV tariff as a weapon turned inward, punishing Canadian agriculture while doing little to strengthen national competitiveness. To them, it's not protection, it's paralysis. Ottawa's decision to mirror Washington's tariff stance once seemed like a gesture of unity across North America. But as months pass, it's morphing into a political liability. On one side stands clean technology and manufacturing, on the other, food security and rural survival. Two sectors, two regions, each claiming to represent Canada's true national interest. The longer Ottawa hesitates, the more this isn't just a trade question. It's a test of how far Canada can stretch before its economic geography begins to pull itself apart. Every option now carries geopolitical weight. Lifting the EV tariff could be seen by Washington as a break in North America's trade front, proof that Canada is ready to chart its own course, even at the risk of U.S. backlash. Keeping the tariff, however, would devastate the prairies. Thousands of farmers could lose their livelihoods, and China, tired of waiting, might close its markets for good. What began as a tariff dispute has become a test of national direction and endurance. Beijing understands Canada's divide. By offering a deal that rewards one region and pressures another, it's applying what analysts call soft leverage, testing Ottawa's independence without open conflict. Observers see this as Canada's first real test of economic sovereignty in the post-globalization era. Torn between loyalty to its closest ally and the promise of recovery, Canada now stands at a crossroads: remain in America's shadow or quietly start redrawing the trade map itself. A single decision from Ottawa could reshape the continent's trade order. Opening the door to Chinese EVs wouldn't just revive exports, it would test the core of the USMCA, the pact binding North America together. Washington could retaliate, not with tariffs, but with technical barriers and regulatory delays to remind Canada where power still rests. Yet if Canada chooses neutrality, neither siding with Washington nor yielding to Beijing, it could become the only country trading freely with both superpowers. For a nation long defined by reliance on its southern neighbor, that would be nothing short of a quiet revolution. Economists warn that Canada's decision today will define its role for the next 20 years. Reopening the canola market might only be the start, the first step toward a new dual-lane trade model, one path tied to North America, the other reaching across the Pacific. So the real question is, will Canada risk comfort for independence, or let this rare moment slip away? What happens next won't just define Canada's trade policy, it will reveal how a middle power navigates a divided world. Every choice now carries both risk and possibility, and whichever path Ottawa takes will send a message far beyond its borders. So, what do you think? Should Canada take the leap and redefine its role between the US and China, or stay safely within the system it knows? If this video gave you something to think about, like and subscribe to support more content like this. Thank you.